Dr. Damian CURON
in charge.
He is here tonight, and he's here to share some wonderful information with us about heart disease and how we can keep our hearts healthy, man. We got our hearts, and we need them for loving. We need them to supply our body structures and to keep us going all throughout life, man. So that's what he's here to do. He's here to share this information, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I want to say special hello to the better half of me, my wife Eleanor.
That's what's up.
Not hello, you gotta give a shout out.
And my little girls Hannah, Naomi, and my dad George, and my mom Veronica. They're listening too. Just say hello. And thanks for everything.
Hey,
and thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
We got a cardiologist with a good heart, man. Yeah, good heart. Love first. First and foremost, he shows his love. Yeah. So, welcome to the show, and tell us, when we talk about the heart. Right, you know, this is, although it's a very strong and powerful structure in our bodies, a very powerful organ supplying all of our body with essential fuel and nutrients. Sure. It's very vulnerable to disease, as we see all around society. People out there struggling with different types of heart disease. Yeah. So how could it be so vulnerable? Such a powerful, very special organ. How can we run into problems with it?
That's a big question, a great question. There's a lot of risk factors for heart disease that we know about, and I want to specifically first just talk about artery disease. So the blood supply to your heart, that's a major issue to keep clean. There are a lot of risk factors that can cause problems to the blood supply to your heart. And we're going to start talking about those. Before we do, I want to just mention how people present with problems of the blood supply to the heart. And if somebody has a complete blockage of an artery going to the heart, they have what's called a heart attack. So I want to talk about how people present with heart attacks, if you don't mind.
What's a heart attack again?
So a heart attack is when an artery that goes to your blood is completely blocked, and it happens suddenly.
Gotcha.
So 99% of that is caused by what's called atherosclerosis, or plaque buildup in the arteries. So I want to talk about how to prevent that from ever happening to you, or if you're listening and you ever have had a heart attack, we want to try to prevent you from ever having a second one. Blockages of other arteries in your body can occur also, of course, same way, and cause, if they happen in the arteries to your brain, it's what's called a stroke. If the arteries to your legs, you may have pains in your legs. Arteries to anywhere in your body can happen, but the ones to your heart specifically are important because they're life-threatening. They can cause somebody to die.
So when you say artery disease, are you talking, just from my own knowledge, as far as cholesterol buildup, or sometimes when they say that when the artery, and I guess when you pull it or you cut it, it's brittle and you hear that crunch,
sure.
Like you see on commercials and stuff like
Absolutely.
that? Okay.
Yeah, so it is cholesterol buildup, and they build up into these things called plaques in the arteries, which are mini blockages, and cholesterol is a big part of that, but there's a lot of things that do cause those plaques to build up. High blood pressure is something that can cause them to build up. Smoking cigarettes right away. Even in a young person who has no other medical problems, smoking cigarette can cause plaque buildup. Diabetes, we mentioned, high blood pressure, cholesterol. There are genetic factors that we don't really know about, so family history is very important. If somebody has a history in their family of people having heart attacks, it's important to know. And then these are hard to prove exactly, but we think that being overweight, obesity, and just a sedentary lifestyle, meaning lack of exercise, is an independent risk factor itself for these plaque buildup.
So you were just talking about buildup causes a heart attack. Now, see, from my understanding, and I know that right now what I'm thinking about is wrong because you corrected me, is that a heart attack happens when a blood vessel or something bursts on your heart?
Well, it closes. It just closes. The blood supply just stops immediately.
It becomes blocked.
And it happens suddenly. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think this is what's really kind of counterintuitive, right? Is that we talk about cardiovascular disease and heart disease and stuff sometimes. It doesn't even start with the pump. In the cases that you're saying, is that this can be the arteries, like peripheral arteries, and even the arteries within the heart, where the heart is working fine at first, but it's in the blood vessels that we have problems.
Yeah.
And,
so
okay.
I mean that is a major issue. I want to emphasize again that a heart attack can happen without warning, meaning some patients come to me and they feel like, well, they're going to have some early signs of a heart attack, meaning chest pain, cardiac chest pain we call angina. So some people, the lucky ones actually with heart attacks or with coronary disease, present with chest pain, angina. However, most people who have heart attacks don't. About a third of people just present suddenly with a heart attack. They never had any kind of warning sign before. And then about a third of people, unfortunately, they just drop dead. And they come, they might make it to the hospital, but they're never revived. So it's important to identify the people who have the risk factors for heart attacks and try to treat and address those risk factors so they never do have a heart attack.
So basically you're saying that if you, excuse me, so basically you're saying that if you're walking around with chest pains, or let's say you're walking around at work and you have slight chest pains, you have a slight shortness of breath, you're not overweight, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a symptom of a heart attack. It could be something totally...
No, so that's the flip side, is that somebody can have chest pains and it may not be related to the heart. I think some textbooks list like 72 different causes of chest pain. Yeah. And I'm sure, Mo, you're reading about some of them now in your
I'm not. Well, go ahead.
in teaching. But but the flip side again is that somebody may not have any symptoms at all. They're walking around fine, and then boom, they have a heart attack one day. And they come in and I say, hey, were you feeling anything before? And they say, no, I wasn't feeling anything before. But they're a diabetic. They're smoking cigarettes. So those type of risk factors maybe should have been addressed before something drastic happened like that.
Yes, and that's the whole point of tonight's show, is to talk about some of these risk factors, because if we just make certain lifestyle changes and we talk about some of these changes that we can make in our lives from week to week, but if we make some of these changes, we can drastically reduce our risk of sudden death. Absolutely. That's scary, man. Nobody wants to go through that.
And we know most of the risk factors. We know them. We've identified them. So it's just a matter of really, meeting up with your healthcare provider, your doctor, and making sure that any risk factors you may have for heart disease are being addressed, and that we can treat whatever is necessary.
It's so funny, and we talk about this every single week and we're going to talk about it more towards the end of the show as far as prevention. But if you think about it, every single guest that we had on the show, for every single ailment, comorbidity, for any chronic disease, they all give us the same solution or the same remedy to preventing. The exercise, eating right, not smoking, etc., etc. It's crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, smoking, if I may bring up smoking, that's a clear one. My own personal feeling is that cigarettes should be banned. If cigarettes came out now, they never would have got approval, just that they've been around a long time, and people talk about, civil liberties with them.
It's a part of the culture.
Sure. Even secondhand smoke, and it's hard to prove secondhand smoke, but secondhand smoke, I think most people believe, is a risk factor of having heart disease, heart attacks. Just anecdotally, in New York City over the last 10 years, we've seen less heart attacks, and I have to give a little nod to Bloomberg and company for some of their restrictions on cigarette smoking in public places and making smokers more difficult time to enjoy a cigarette. I think that it's made a difference in terms of reducing the numbers of heart attacks.
True story.
Yeah, another thing that's happened recently is this. I don't know if you guys have experience with the electronic cigarettes. If you've seen people,
I've heard about them. I heard about them.
Yeah, I had a patient light up in the room in front of me about a year ago, and literally I thought he had a cigarette, but it was one of these new electronic cigarettes, and it cures the nicotine fix, but there's none of the problems with cause. It's not a real cigarette, of course, so it's a little battery operated thing, and It gives you your nicotine that you need, and I've had a couple patients just anecdotally swear by
the nicotine that you need. That doesn't sound right.
No,
the nicotine that you need.
Well, most people are addicted to the nicotine in cigarettes. Unfortunately, the nicotine is really not a problem. I mean, nicotine doesn't do too much bad to you, actually. It's the other stuff in the cigarettes that actually destroy your arteries, basically.
Yes.
So, nicotine gum, nicotine replacement, they have little inhaler things can work. And then there are other drugs people can take to kind of decrease your craving for cigarettes. I've had mixed success with some of those. There's one called Zyban. There's another one called Chantix. Patients have come back to me, and again, a lot of this is anecdotally, so not reporting too much on like randomized trials, but patients come back to me and they say, yeah, I took this pill and I stopped smoking, but I don't feel like doing anything now. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to have sex. I don't want to exercise. I just feel like a zombie.
That's depression right there.
Yeah, and I say, great. I'd rather have a non-smoking zombie than somebody smoking, having fun. I mean, I'm being facetious, but that's how serious. That's how serious I feel about cigarettes. So.
Yep.
Wow. All right, and we're going to continue talking about some other risk factors, ladies and gentlemen, for heart disease. So we're going to get ready to take a break, but you can definitely call us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about tonight's show. The number to the studio is 212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. You're listening to Health in Harlem. We'll be right back after this break.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
If you know the symptoms and get the facts, you'll know the signs of a heart attack. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911.
Pain in your neck, chest,
arms or jaw,
shortness of breath,
please tell us more. Cold sweats and nausea, tiredness,
it's time to take it
serious. Back pain, stomach pain, shortness of breath, cold sweats, nausea, dizziness. If you know the symptoms and heed the signs, you'll be around for a long, long time. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911.
Learn a song that could save your life. Get a free download at womenshealth.gov/heart attack.
Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911. If any sound familiar, call 911.
A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
911.
I remember house when house was soul music and R&B before house was disco. I remember house when house was about love. House was about love.
Hi, this is astronumerologist Lloyd Strayhorn inviting you to meet me at WHCR's Valentine's Day party on Thursday, February 14th. I'll be doing relationship readings that will hopefully lead you to your soulmate. WHCR's house music DJs, DJ Mike D, DJ Vince the Prince, DJ Justice, and DJ Black Icon 1 will be spinning the wheels. There will be free food, a cash bar, and admission is only $10. That's Hearts Meet when house people meet Thursday, February 14th at Image Nation's Raw Space, located at 2031 Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard between 121st and 122nd Street. I'll see you there.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Welcome back to Health in Harlem, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Maurice Selby.
And this is Sean Shivers.
And we have with us tonight Dr. Damian CURON. He's the chief of cardiology at Harlem Hospital. And we're talking about cardiovascular disease tonight. And right before the break, we were talking about the fact that, a lot of times the heart is fine up until a point. But arterial disease, a disease of the blood vessels, can actually lead to heart attacks. Mm-hmm. And this is something that could come on suddenly. You could have warning signs. You could have signs and symptoms, as Sean talked about, some of them actually the chest pain, and you could have the shortness of breath. But then there's some people where this just happens suddenly, and boom, they have a heart attack, full-blown heart attack right there, and sudden death.
Absolutely. I do want to mention just real quick, I got a text that the electronic cigarettes are not yet FDA approved, but anecdotally I've had good success with patients quitting their smoking. You're right, absolutely what you said. So people can just suddenly have a heart attack who never had any symptoms before, which is a little bit scary. But if you talk with your healthcare provider and we identify your risk factors for having heart disease, we can prevent most heart attacks. For people who do have symptoms, and they can vary, there's a lot in the literature about difference among different people, difference between men and women, difference between the elderly and the young. But something that's pretty consistent is whatever the symptoms are, if it's trouble breathing, if it's palpitations, which is an awareness of your heart, your own heart beating, which is abnormal, if it's chest discomfort. And by the way, I say discomfort because some people, you ask them if they have pain, they say, no pain, but I feel like something's squeezing on my chest. So but they don't describe it as pain. But it would be pretty consistent that it happens with exertion, meaning when they're walking around. So if somebody tells me I felt some heaviness in my chest right after dinner and it was making me think about a heart attack, but then they said they went for a long walk and it went away, then I'm really less thinking about artery disease in that person. But again, yeah, so people can have symptoms of chest discomfort, or they may not. And we were talking about some of the risk factors. Smoking is obvious. High blood pressure is another thing, and the only way to know your blood pressure is to have it checked. You don't feel what your blood pressure is. Some people are a little bit aware of it's very low or very high, but you have to get that checked. You can't assume or feel what your own blood pressure is.
Yes.
Your cholesterol, same thing. No symptoms. You can have sky-high cholesterol. You have no symptoms. So that's something that has to be checked periodically.
Can we go back for 1 second about the high blood pressure? And I know I brought this question up before on the show, but now I'm going to bring it to you, a new doctor on the show.
Sure.
I go to my physician, and they take my blood pressure, and they says, okay, Mr. Shivers, your blood pressure is 120/40, and then that's all they say. And I'm looking at them like, okay, what are you telling me? What
does that mean?
What does that mean? They never explain to you what that means. Can you explain to me
Absolutely.
what that means, please?
First of all, there's just a normal range of blood pressure for people, and I was always taught 120/80. But most trials show that the lower your blood pressure, the better for you in general. Obviously, if it's really low and you're dizzy, that's not good for you. Something's wrong. But the lower, the better. And how aggressive we are in terms of managing someone with maybe borderline high blood pressure really depends on your other risk factors. So if you are a diabetic and you smoke cigarettes and your blood pressure is borderline high, then as a cardiologist we might put you on a medication right away. But if you're an otherwise healthy person who doesn't have a lot of risk factors and your blood pressure is borderline high, then we may tell you, let's try some lifestyle stuff. If you can lose even 5 or 10 pounds, we tell people lose weight, they think they have to drop 40 pounds. If you lose 5 or 10 pounds, it can make a difference for your blood pressure. Regular exercise helps your blood pressure. So it really depends on, to answer your question, Sean, on what your other risk factors are in terms of what's an ideal blood pressure.
So you had said 120/80. That is a normal blood pressure. So if someone says that your blood pressure, I guess, is 140/90, that's high.
It is high.
Or if it's 100/70, it's low.
It's still normal. It's still in the normal range. You don't really call it low unless that top number gets less than 90, which is pretty low. But some young, thin people, particularly women, they walk around with blood pressures of 90/50, like that. That's normal for them. We're not going to do anything about that. So, but yeah, no. So high blood pressure is a definite something you have to check out. Family history is very important too. If I could just mention that quick,
Please do.
That within your family, if any first degree relatives have had a heart attack, or not just had a heart attack, but if somebody died suddenly. So sometimes people say, well, my father's brother just died suddenly. We don't know what happened. That's very likely that was a heart attack. Because like I said, about a third of coronary disease presents with people just dying suddenly. So that they may never have diagnosed that, but that's what it was.
Wow.
So it's important to know.
So this raises a lot of flags because when we talk about some of these risk factors, we're talking about there's a good number of people that have more than one of these risk factors, whether it's the smoking and maybe diabetes, like you said, or the cholesterol problems, which could run in your family. So, and you have the heart disease on top of that in your family history. All of these things can come into play, and we haven't even gotten into things as far as drug abuse and things like that. How these things can impact all of this as well. So there's a number of things that we need.
Absolutely. If I could just mention quick the cocaine use, and the real problem with cocaine is that it can suddenly cause a heart attack in a healthy person with normal arteries by just the sudden appearance of a blood clot in the artery, because it causes a...
Doesn't it like cause your heart to increase its beats?
Yeah, it causes it to race, and the heart goes very fast, but it causes you to become what's called procoagulant, and the blood just clots. So you may not have any plaques in your artery, you're clean living, but if somebody uses cocaine even once or twice, boom, a blood clot can form, they can have a sudden heart attack. And, unfortunately, we see that time to time. So that is something that absolutely 100% has to be avoided.
Wow. Now, tell me if this statistic is still right. And this is going back to, and these numbers I have from 2010, 2011, but it says that out of the, and I don't know if you know the statistic or not, but out of all the 5 boroughs, that Central Harlem and East Harlem has the highest number of cardiovascular and heart disease. Has that changed? Is that still the same, or do you know anything about that at all?
I'm not real specific about that. I know, the population has changed. There's so many factors that factor into that, like cultural stuff and the prevalence of those risk factors. So.
Well, one thing I will say then, going back to in 2011, it stated from this information that I received from Harlem Hospital that heart disease, cardiovascular disease, is the highest of all the 5 boroughs in the Harlem area. So that's why we were pushing these shows.
It could be.
I guess things, 2 years later, probably things could have changed. People are not changing their lifestyle and stuff. But just to know that the area that we live in at one point recently was the highest in all 5 boroughs.
Well, there's no doubt with blood pressure it is the highest risk factor, and there are cultural factors that can lead to that. And blood pressure, even if it doesn't affect your arteries, high blood pressure can cause your heart to enlarge, thicken. Your heart's a muscle; it gets thick and large, but the heart's the only muscle which you don't want to get larger, as opposed to the other muscles in your body. And when that happens, it can lead to problems. It doesn't work as well when it's as large. Blood flow can back up into your lungs and cause breathing problems. So, and besides the heart too, by the way, high blood pressure can cause strokes and kidney damage. So, for that reason alone, I wouldn't be surprised if that's absolutely true what you said, Sean.
All right, and from the risk factors that we talked about, there are a good number that are what we call modifiable risk factors, meaning if you have a problem with cholesterol, it could be genetic. It could be a genetic predisposition where you just have high cholesterol because your body can't deal with it properly. And there's not much we can do about it. We can lower our intake in terms of diet and how much cholesterol we consume, but there's not much you can do when it comes to genetics. However, we do have some of these risk factors that we talked about in terms of the smoking, in terms of the inactivity, the sedentism, being sedentary and not going out and engaging in exercise and being social.
Absolutely.
And not knowing the family history. These are things that we can modify. We can do something about.
You can change your genetics, and and also male sex is a risk factor too. You can't change that. However, with the cholesterol thing, a lot of your cholesterol level comes from your diet. So, Sean knows more about this than I do. But I will tell you that most of your cholesterol comes from saturated fat. And if you eat saturated fat, that's going to build up cholesterol and build up the plaques in your arteries. I am a little disturbed at how many different diets there are out there. And I think the public in general gets kind of a mixed message about what are the right foods to eat.
I agree.
And it's individual for whichever patient you're taking care of. But if you're trying to keep your arteries clean and prevent heart attacks, then there is no doubt that a diet low in saturated fat is the best way to go. So,
and before we go to break, when we talk about low saturated fats, what foods are we talking about limiting?
So we're particularly talking about animal products, meats, red meats, and dairy too. I do want to mention dairy. Now, some dairy is okay, low fat, but cheese, I think, is a kind of a silent enemy we don't know about. Very cheesy foods are very high in fat and high in saturated fat, and can lead to plaques and plaque buildup in arteries.
And just to mention, I'm just thinking is that I just recently heard this, that if you get meats like from organic, opposed to meats that they put a lot of additives inside,
a lot of
hormones inside the animal, that they really encourage red meats from organic animals opposed to, as I said, all that additives.
Or different eggs, for instance, organic
correct,
eggs.
Correct,
Shown to have less
chickens.
cholesterol.
Correct. Well, the point I'm just trying to say is that at one point the meats and the fats of meats, they said is not good for you, but now it all depends on how that animal is raised.
Yeah, that may be true.
Yeah.
I will announce a bias. I am a vegetarian. I've been since after college. I got into animal rights a little bit. I'm an animal lover, but the side benefit is it's healthy and hopefully keeping my arteries open. So I believe in the vegetarian stuff. But if you look at the health stuff, even the free range and organic meats, they do have saturated fat. Probably fish is good for you, or some of the leaner meats. I won't argue with that.
Correct.
But some of the heavy dairy stuff like cheese and frostings, we don't realize what they're doing inside. So they got to be eaten.
Eat those in moderation
at best.
And that's the key. We're not trying to tell you to cut it out totally. If you love it, that's what you like to eat.
I do.
You can eat it, but you can't. But you can't do this every single day. You can't have eggs every day.
Yes.
And the
moderation and portion size.
We got to control this stuff. Now, you're listening to Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM New York. Remember, you can call us at any time
during this program.
212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. You can even ask the question over on the phone if you're shy about going on the air, and I'll ask the question for you. And you can also hit us up on Facebook. We have our Facebook page. You go to Facebook, type in Health in Harlem in the search box, and we'll pop right up Health in Harlem, and you can leave a question on our right there on our page. You're listening to Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM New York. We'll be right back.
WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Man Up in Harlem is a by men for men ministry that focuses on creating positive changes in the Harlem community through prayer and community service. The group hosts a men's empowerment hour every Wednesday at 7 p.m. in the Polo Grounds Housing Community Room, and a weekly prayer walk every Thursday morning in several locations. At the prayer walk, members pray together in a football-style huddle about community issues. Man Up in Harlem's slogan is "Don't talk about it, be about it." If you'd like to join a prayer walk, meet at 6 a.m. at the 155th subway station for the Polo Grounds House Walk, or at the Dunkin' Donuts at 126 in Amsterdam for the Grand House Walk. For more information, please check out www.manupharlem.org.
Hi, I'm Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase. Tune in every Thursday from 8 to 12 midnight for some solid cultural roots music and some sweet lovers rock. Also, informative interviews and giveaways. Right here on the Vinny B Showcase every Thursday, 8 to 12 midnight on WHCR 90.3 FM. Peace.
WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
The world is filled with hate, but only love is the cure.
Welcome back to Health in Harlem, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go. My voice is getting raspy, man. Hey. You can tell us the end of the week when we come here. And it seems like just yesterday, Sean and I were saying it, that we were here in the studio, and here we are again. It's another Thursday, another week.
I was like, I'll see you tomorrow. You're like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's right now.
That is insane.
I just want to say I was talking to Maurice and Sean at the break, and they are so knowledgeable about this topic, and I can't imagine each week them handling just a completely different health topic. But they were saying, Mel, they spin the information a little bit back to me and in a form of a question. But I really want to congratulate them.
Thank you.
They've done very well. I'm very impressed, guys.
That's what's up, man. Thank you, and we appreciate that feedback.
Yep.
And let's get back into this topic, because we do have the cynics out there. And one of the things that you'll hear sometimes is, well, I gotta die of something. I'm gonna die of something someday, and a heart attack, if that's the way I go, then that's what it is. Or if I go from a stroke, then that's okay. Whatever. That's God's will, right? However, sometimes I don't think we understand how painful, how much suffering there can be with some of these events that could arise if we have cardiovascular disease. When we talk about a heart attack, we're talking about excruciating pain, and this is a something that you actually know what's happening. A lot of people, and this has been reported, when they're having a heart attack, they have this sense of doom. They know that something is terribly wrong. You see them, they're scared.
Define doom.
Doom in that they know that something is terribly wrong and that they are going to die.
Yeah, they may know that even like a day prior. They feel something weird, and they're okay, and then the next day they have a heart attack. That's been described. I don't know what that really is ascribed to, but yeah.
And so there's better ways to go. That's what I'm trying to say, is that when we talk about making some of these changes in our lifestyle, we talked about some of these modifiable risk factors. Modifiable meaning we can do something about them, to avoid.
Don't forget, guys. So just an answer back to that. Anything that causes a heart attack can cause a stroke too. So a stroke is the worst way to go. I mean, you can be left, laying in a bed and paralyzed and unable to speak. To me, in some cases, and I hate to say it, but it's worse than death. So a heart attack, in some sense, I think because technology has really boomed over the last 30 years in terms of doing angioplasties and stents, and I'll talk a little bit about what happens to patients who come into the hospital with heart attacks. But patients may feel like, oh, I could just come in and boom, I'll get rushed up and have a stent put in, and they'll open my artery, and so what? But those are the lucky ones, again, who come in time to have that done. If it's not done in time or it can't be done, the patient can be left with serious heart damage and have what's called congestive heart failure, a very weak heart, and then their life is completely changed. It can be completely changed.
Is it possible to give a brief summary of someone who comes through the ER with the signs and symptoms of a heart attack? Can you give a summary of what they're going through, what's happening to them before they're actually admitted into the hospital?
So first of all, when we see somebody quickly who comes in the emergency room, we want to assess what their risk factors are. We talk about, are they diabetic, are they a smoker, do they have high blood pressure, what's their cholesterol history, what's their family history, and then kind of see what the complaint was. Now, a heart attack can present, with just somebody just sitting there and they have symptoms, but the anginal symptoms, which may or may not precede it, would happen with exertion. I did get a text message, again, about women versus men. Women do present a little bit differently than we've always learned in textbooks. They may not have the same kind of chest pressure. They may have more just kind of dyspnea, which means difficulty breathing and sweating with no chest discomfort at all. So we as physicians have to be on the lookout a little bit more for women who come in with those type of symptoms looking for heart attacks. So right away, if anybody has symptoms suggestive of a heart attack at all, Sean, we'll get an EKG done right away within 10 minutes. And if it's a big heart attack, it'll show up right there on your EKG. If it's a smaller heart attack, it may not show up on the EKG right away, and it may take a while to make the diagnosis, even hours later with a blood test. But before that happens, we're treating you with blood thinners, with oxygen, We may give you nitroglycerin, which opens up your arteries a little bit.
What about the aspirin? I heard about the aspirin.
Absolutely. So that's a blood thinner. It's an anti-platelet drug, and platelets are what form the blood clots at the end. So anything anti-platelet, the aspirin will give you one to chew. If you're at home and you think you may be having a heart attack, it's not a bad idea. Always check with your doctor. But if you don't have time, just to take an aspirin and chew it up, because that'll work right away in terms of blocking your platelets from clotting together. So you get an aspirin, you get heparin, and then we'll admit you to the hospital and see what's going on. If it's a big, major heart attack, then we rush you right away to a cath lab where we can open your artery. If it's somewhere in a rural area, maybe there's not a cath lab available to do that, there are super clot buster medications you can get in your vein to open up the clotting medication, to open up the blockage in your artery. So it's very variable how the patients are, depending on how big the heart attack was when they come. Some people come in and they said, "Oh, I was told I had a heart attack. I didn't even know it. I was just a little bit short of breath," but they really did have one. And then other people, as you were talking about, Maurice, before, may have dramatic symptoms of, severe crushing chest pain, the worst in their life. They can't breathe. Some are so severe they have to be connected to a breathing machine or have special pumps put into their body. So it very varies depending on the size of the heart attack.
Wow.
And one thing I want to mention when it talks about, you were talking about they give you kind of like anticoagulation type medications and stuff. One thing that I found out within the past 6 years, and this is something that we changed here as far as certain foods that we give within city hospitals, is that as you're trying to treat the heart attack, we're giving you kale and giving you green leafy vegetables, and we're giving you cranberry juice. And those items counteract, at the right word, with the medication. So it prevents the medication from working. So food and nutrition is making your life not any easier. So there's certain foods that we have to make sure you don't consume to make sure the medication works correctly.
I would just say that once somebody has a diagnosis of heart disease, and anyone who had a heart attack has heart disease, should probably consult at some point with a food and nutrition expert who can talk to them about obviously what the right things to eat, which we can talk about a little bit, but also, as you mentioned, Sean, interactions with certain blood thinner medications you may take. There are some things. So I would suggest anybody who did have a diagnosis of heart disease at some point have a consultation with a food and nutrition expert. It might be a cardiologist alone, but it could be a food and nutrition person too. So Harlem Hospital Center, by the way, where I work, has rated very high in the last calendar year in terms of our treatment for patients with heart attacks. And there's certain medications that it's standard procedure. You have to give them when they come in, like we were talking about, the blood thinners and the aspirin and the nitroglycerin. And we last year rated at the highest percentile of hospitals in terms of how we treat patients.
Now is that hospitals in the city or hospitals in the country? Because I heard the same exact thing too. Is that Harlem Hospital has one of the highest rating cardiology departments, city, state. But I know it's high. It's up there.
Yeah, if I can give just a quick plug for Harlem Hospital.
Hey, why not? Why not?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you walk by there,
Harlem,
yes,
absolutely. If you walk by there, we do have a brand new hospital actually,
beautiful.
And it's beautiful outside. It's called the Mural Pavilion. It's even more beautiful inside. I'll tell you, it's cutting edge technology, and we have a lot of new people and a lot of new technology that we're excited about there.
A lot of new ideas, very open-minded. Yeah,
absolutely. So look into us is what I would tell you in terms of getting your your cardiac care and your general health care there. Definitely. So.
All right. And just another thing that I wanted to point out was that even before the heart attack, there are certain things, certain signs and symptoms that you can have, or certain aspects of your life can be affected. And we talked about some of the limitations in terms of your activity. You might feel more tired than usual. But it even goes to, because sometimes, people, like we said, we got the cynics that like, whatever, I'll pass away from it, not a problem. But we're talking about, you can't carry your groceries, but guess what? Your sex life could be affected as well. We're talking about every organ system in your body, every aspect of your life can be affected by this disease. So this is why we want you to take charge and start to do something now. Not tomorrow, not next calendar year, with your new Year's resolution next year. We're talking about now, right?
You were talking about before, Maurice, about risk factors you can control and risk factors you can't control. So why not focus on things you can control? I mean, you need to know your family history if you can. You need to know risk factors maybe that can't be as modified as much, but something like exercise is something you can control. And I just want to mention one quick thing about exercise. People think when we say, you need to exercise more, you have to join a gym. But really,
not at all.
It's not that much. It's not that much. You just have to get your heart rate going up for about 30 minutes in a day. And it's hard to prove things with exercise because they're related to so many other things we do. So it's hard to get a trial that shows exercise does this or that. But there is some data showing even something like interval training, which I know is becoming popular, where you kind of for 1 minute maybe jog, and then you walk for a minute, and then you jog again for another minute, and then walk for a minute. Getting your heart rate up in that method may be just as beneficial as getting your heart rate up with regular exercise for 30 minutes. Now, anybody who wants to start an exercise program, if they have any of these risk factors we've talked about for heart disease, diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, or smoking, they should really check with their healthcare provider before doing serious exercise. We could do a little bit at a time, see how you feel. But people who have trouble when they're, say, carrying their groceries and they feel some trouble breathing, they could just be deconditioned, which is our fancy word of saying you're out of shape. Or it could be a signal of something going on with their heart, something going on with their lungs. So it should be brought to the attention of your doctor, your healthcare provider. And if we're not sure, usually a cardiologist will do a stress test where we put you on a treadmill usually, and we kind of watch what you do. We hook you up to an EKG. We see how your blood pressure responds to exercise and see how you do. And we're active in doing that type of stuff at Harlem.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to take our last break for the evening. Once again, you can call us at 212-650-6903. That's 212-650-6903. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
I remember house when house was soul music and R&B before house was disco. I remember house when house was about love. House was about love.
Hi, this is astronumerologist Lloyd Strayhorn inviting you to meet me at WHCR's Valentine's Day party on Thursday, February 14th. I'll be doing relationship readings that will hopefully lead you to your soulmate. WHCR's house music DJs, DJ Mike D, DJ Vince the Prince, DJ Justice, and DJ Black Icon 1 will be spinning the wheels. There will be free food, a cash bar, and admission is only $10. That's Hearts Meet when house people meet Thursday, February 14th at Image Nation's Raw Space, located at 2031 Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard between 121st and 122nd Street. I'll see you there.
Here comes the sun.
Hi, I'm Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase. Tune in every Thursday from 8 to 12 midnight for some solid cultural roots music and some sweet lovers rock. Also, informative interviews and giveaways. Right here on the Vinny B Showcase every Thursday, 8 to 12 midnight on WHCR 90.3 FM. Peace.
I'm tougher than rock. Said I'm black. I'm tougher than rock.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
That is right, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for healing, and I'm Maurice Selby.
And I am Sean Shivers.
And for that healing, we have Dr. Damian CURON, and he is. Wait, did I say it right? All right, I'm making sure. I'm shot. Never mind me. We have Dr. Damian CURON, and he is the chief cardiologist.
He's
at
the one
Harlem
in
Hospital.
charge.
The man in charge at
Who's
Harlem.
giving you this free information.
The fabled Harlem Hospital.
I'm charging you.
Okay.
For that.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about cardiovascular disease. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about some of the risk factors. We talked about what happens if you have a heart attack and you go to the hospital, what they do to take care of you. And we even talked about how we can address some of these risk factors and reduce our risk. And now in our last part of the show, we just want to talk about, what did we want to?
Well, you know what?
My fault.
Can you give a quick summary as far as the symptoms?
Sure.
And then I want to talk a little bit about, because stress.
Yeah, stress.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking in the break about stress. Can stress be a contributor to heart disease? And it's hard to prove exactly. It's hard to measure stress. People come and they say they have stress. If I tell people cut down on stress, they're like, thanks a lot. What am I supposed to do? But there are a couple interesting studies that I can mention real quick. One is they study the rates of heart attacks in New York City before and after, 6 months before, 6 months and after 9/11. And the rates of heart attacks were much higher the 6 months afterwards. A similar study was done, not as serious an event, but 2006 in Germany when they had the World Cup soccer match and Germany lost. The 24 hours before, when everyone was happy and gung-ho, the 24 hours afterwards, the rates of heart attacks went way up afterwards. So that kind of proved that stress can lead to heart attacks. It is a contributing factor. It's hard to measure. It's not easy to reduce. You guys probably know better than me. How do we reduce stress? I mean, it's individual. You got to talk to people about activities they could do to reduce it. Regular exercise is something, though, that's been shown to reduce stress. So, you know, just another plug for that. But, yes, stress is something that it's hard to measure, but it's definitely a contributor to the problems with the arteries.
Wow. So, and we have a caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am. It's Valerie calling in.
Hey, what's up, Valerie?
How you doing tonight?
Hi, Valerie.
Hi,
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. CURON, for coming in this evening. And my question is twofold. Excuse me. What is the length of time recovery process after a heart attack? And what is the likelihood of having another heart attack after having one?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. The recovery time nowadays is much less than it was, say, about 20, 30 years ago, because we have newer drugs and newer technologies, say, to open a blocked artery. So patient generally after a heart attack is back doing what they were doing in about a week. If it was a real major heart attack where you had major heart damage, then it can take longer than that, weeks, even to months. A very, very small heart attack would take just a few days, and as long as you're on the right medications, the risk of having a second heart attack is always there, and it's more than the next person who never had one. But the medications we prescribe now work so well that your risk is very small of having a second heart attack. I would say on the order of maybe 20%, something like that. But those are great questions. It depends on the size of your heart attack, really. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, and Valerie, this is Sean. Don't hang up yet, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you very much for calling in. And we that's a major question.
Yeah.
About the because that's something that I think a lot of people that have had heart attacks in the past can be very concerned about legitimately is will this happen again, especially if they had some of the, the more severe heart attack, and we talked about some of the symptoms, it's very scary.
Yeah.
That could be a major concern for somebody to deal with. And talk about stress. Being stressed out about that, man, that might lead to problems.
Medications that we prescribe now, particularly the cholesterol medications, so anybody who had a heart attack, should be on a cholesterol medication. Anybody who had a heart attack should be on an aspirin a day. We don't really have time to talk about who should be on a baby aspirin a day, but definitely if you've had a heart attack before, you should be. Always check with your doctor, healthcare provider before. But these medications work very well in preventing that second heart attack. We were talking about what the symptoms of a heart attack are, just to emphasize. They can vary in different people. Chest sensations, discomfort, pressure, pain, sweatiness, difficulty breathing, and the symptoms should last for more than a couple minutes. Sometimes people come to me and they say, I felt this pressure in my chest and my heart racing. How long? 2 seconds. When? Yesterday. I was sitting watching TV. Forget it. Get out of here. Next patient. Not really like that, but that's not a heart attack or a heart problem. So it's different with different patients. Women we mentioned are different. They may just have breathing difficulty with sweatiness. I do find people who have symptoms and they get sweaty. That always concerns me. Symptoms with exertion, symptoms that occur only when you exert yourself, should always be brought to the attention of your doctor, and particularly a cardiologist, because that could be the sign of a heart attack. As we mentioned, it might not be. It could be, anything else. It could be a pulled muscle in your chest. But if it happens, particularly with exertion, then I think you should bring it to the attention of your medical provider. Absolutely. So. All
right. And I just want to ask you really quick, because from this is my impression, the cardiologists that we've had on the show, we also had Dr. Brady Pierre Lewis.
Sure.
He was on the show a few times, actually. And you guys are always very passionate about what you do, and that's most
everybody's passionate. You notice that from Harlem Hospital,
but
what they do.
I think you guys take it to the next level. You became a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Well, it's also animal rights as well, and you definitely express that.
The heart's the center of your body. How could you not be passionate about your heart? That's how I feel about it. But
so a quick question. This is a little personal question. So, when you was going through medical school, did you always know that you was going to be a cardiologist or study the heart?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's just something that the more I did, the more I liked. I had a couple role models, who were cardiologists who I respected and were good teachers. I want to mention Dr. James Mazzara, who is retired but was a real role model for me in terms of going into cardiology. So.
Excellent.
All right. And as we wrap up, what would you say is the most important message that people should take away from tonight's show? If there's anything that we got across tonight, what is the message that they need to carry forward with them?
I would say stay away from cigarettes, number one, really, and that's a personal thing for me. Stay away from cigarettes, and just a 1B, if you will, is meet periodically with your doctor or healthcare provider. We have plenty at Harlem Hospital. We'd be happy to take care of you, because a lot of the risk factors we talked about for heart disease, they may not cause any symptoms in you, and the only way to know you have them is to get a checkup. So that would be.
Got it. All right. We thank you very much, Dr. CURON, for coming in and sharing this information, taking the time out to share this.
I really appreciate it.
And we look forward to, if we could do this again, that'll be excellent.
He'll be back.
All right.
Don't worry about it. You'll be back.
Let me know.
Sean calling it. We got to thank Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase in the house, ladies and gentlemen. You know what time it is. Got to give him a shout out. And then also, we got to thank my man Sean Shivers.
I want to thank you too, brother. Thank you. And also, thank you. And I want to mention also too, next week we're having Dr. Naharbeck on the show.
Okay.
And what we're going to talk about, and make sure you tune in, is painkiller abuse. There's a lot of people out there who are abusing painkillers, popping painkillers like candy. And people are dropping dead all across the country. That's going to be our topic next week. So please make sure you tune in.
For real. Yeah. We also want to thank Miss Valerie Wright, not only for producing this show and getting us wonderful guests like Dr. CURON, but also calling in,
asking questions that I was like, yeah, what should I ask
that? She's an inspiration. Yes. She's been very helpful to all of us at Harlem Hospital.
Yes. Yep. So we'll be right back here next week, ladies and gentlemen, Thursday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. You're listening to Health in Harlem. This show is dedicated to the memory of Miss Gloria Thomas. Harlem, take care of yourself.